Thanks to everyone who did so much to organize today. I'm Amanda Bergson-Shilcock. I'm with National Skills Coalition. We are a Big Tent bipartisan coalition of workforce and education advocates. We advocate for good state and federal policies around workforce development. My job here is threefold. I'm going to do air traffic control on these amazing, incredibly brilliant panelists to make sure that we keep our comments short and sweet and have plenty of time to get to your questions. I'm also going to provide a little bit of connective tissue to pull together different elements of the remarks. But I'm also going to give you one story to take home. How many of you know that there's such a thing as Fitbits for cows? Be honest. Okay, 2 of you, Fitbits for cows, good, all right. So the rest of you, I'm giving you something you can take home tonight and tell your significant other about. When you say, I was at a rural broadband event, and it's really important to have broadband in rural parts of the state, and people say, isn't Pennsylvania a big ag state? Isn't our farms really important? Yeah, precision agriculture. You know what precision ag needs? Broadband. You know why? In part because there are now Fitbits for cows. It's a collar, they wear them around their neck, and they keep track of how much the cow is moving around and eating, because not moving around properly and eating is a sign of illness, right? Which is a big problem, both financially and otherwise, right? And so you might not think of farm workers as needing to be able to troubleshoot electronic equipment or have broadband skills, but now increasingly, folks who work on farms are needing to have those. We could have a long discussion about the whole exciting and fascinating world of precision ag, but we're not here to do that. We're here to talk workforce development. I'm going to go in a minute to our amazing panelists, but I wanted to give you that story because humans are wired for story, right? The thing we're most going to remember is some story, and what I want you to remember is broadband workforce development. Yeah, it's absolutely about fiber optic technicians and broadband tower technicians and all the positions we're going to be talking about in just a moment here, but it's also about all the people in other types of jobs that didn't used to require digital skills and now do. And so I tell you the Fitbit for Cows story because it's memorable and sticky and it'll stay in your memory. But also because that's the takeaway I want you to hear, right? Pennsylvania is currently, and I say this as a proud fourth generation Pennsylvanian, we are getting our butts kicked by Ohio and Illinois and Colorado and some other states, including Florida and Arkansas, that have really robust broadband workforce development plans. And we are not there yet. Okay, and I say this with love in my heart from my home state. So you're going to hear from 4 terrific, really thoughtful panelists, and I'm going to go in just a moment to Debbie to get going here. But be thinking about what more we as a state can be doing, not just using BEAD money, but creatively using other IIJA money from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and other sources to help solve these broadband workforce development problems. Okay, so our first panelist is Debbie Kish. She's the Vice President of Research and Workforce Development at the Fiber Broadband Association. You were here this morning, you heard from her already. You know how great she is, so I'm not going to take any more of her time. Debbie, let me turn to you to talk just a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of labor demands and shortages in the field, and what you're hearing in terms of skill demands for fiber workers in this area.
Yeah, thanks. So great is really nice. Thank you for that. Fiber, I think I started earlier in the plenary with fiber being approximately a 40-ish some odd year old industry. So we're young, but our workforce is old. And the issue is that, and like I said before, we didn't do a good job at keeping this occupation on the forefront for young people. So we have, this habit of going out and just saying, hey, you're a warm body, let me teach you how to splice, or let me teach you how to test, or whatever. So we were very skill oriented. But way back in the beginning, when we first started deploying fiber, we taught deep. We taught about the science of fiber. We talked about the properties of fiber. So all of that knowledge has kind of gone away because we were so desperate for workers. So I can't express enough. And then so let me also go on another slight tangent. Short-term programs sort of developed. There's lots of short-term, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day programs that are out there, but they're still very task-oriented. And, don't get me wrong, this is a very Montessori kind of job. So some people do migrate to splicing. Some people do migrate to troubleshooting, and others like to work with the customers. They like to marry the cable guy. They like to go to the home and do the drops from home. So the way that I look at it is that we need to bring knowledge back into the training. And we not only need to bring interest to the industry, but we also need to bring knowledge back into the training. To me, knowledge is power. Knowledge creates long-term career opportunities. And telco, I've been in telco for almost half my life. And I think it is the best kept secret in any industry. There are so many opportunities. We created a fiber optic tech course that goes beyond the 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, or week-long 40-hour program. So we have it's FBA's Optic Path. And what it is, it's up to 144 hours of hands-on and knowledge training. So we're roughly 40% is knowledge, 60% is hands-on. Because don't get me wrong, hands-on skills is very important. It's very important. I know how to splice. Anybody who knows how to splice? Cool, that's pretty good. But it's obviously a repetitive, repetitious motor skill, memory, kind of job. But, in our program, we have 15 modules. We have a huge focus on safety, but we also go into properties of fiber and how fiber is made. So one of our schools actually had said, don't you think that, telling them how fiber is made, is that kind of TMI? Like, why do they need to know that? And, I'm like, you're looking at it wrong. Because not everybody wants to be in the field. We get people in a classroom, and the first time you put them up in a bucket truck, they're like, oh, I'm afraid of heights. So there's all these, you got to give them real life examples and how this job is going to be. It's 90 degrees and 95% humidity. You're going to be working outside. So it's not for everybody, but when you build other knowledge into the program and you teach them all of these nitty gritty details, I've always known that the devil is in the details. That person who's learning how to make fiber, how fiber is made, might be that person who goes on to be an engineer. They might say, I want to be a field worker. I want to be a draw technician or something. And if you've ever visited a fiber plant where fiber is made, if you haven't, I suggest you go do it because it's really freaking cool. And even cabling plants, totally feels like Willy Wonka at the chocolate factory. So even if it means that we bring young people into, like these plants where all this stuff is done, perhaps then we'll get a little bit more interest because they'll see like all the working parts and moving parts. And I think I went way off topic.
No, that's exactly it.
That's what I do.
You made your way exactly back to what we hoped you'd cover. So thank you. I forgot to say two things. First of all, if you see me looking down, I'm not being rude. I'm just checking to make sure there aren't questions coming in from online that I need to make sure that we answer. And secondly, I am also, in addition to playing air traffic control, going to make sure that folks actually use the microphone because it's a disability accessibility issue, as well as being really important for folks online. Okay, we're now going to turn to Amelia de Jesus, who is the Vice President for Workforce Solutions at the Wireless Industry Association. Amelia, tell us a little bit about how your organization is thinking about broadband workforce development issues. What is top of mind for you all?
Absolutely. So I do want to mention that I work nationally across multiple states. So I'm always looking at best practices and making sure that I'm sharing knowledge across the states because, again, our overarching goal is internet for all, so I want all the states to be successful. I do appreciate, the call out to Ohio because WIA does lead the sector partnership for Ohio. And what I will tell you is they started probably about 20 plus months ago. And they were very deliberate and thoughtful in terms of their strategy. They wanted to make sure they were increasing awareness, not just from an industry perspective, but from occupations, the different careers that exist in our industry. Then they wanted to make sure that they had the available training and education and be able to scale that because we're talking about rural expansion. So taking it from urban areas, central university systems, and then pushing it out into some of the rural community. And then thirdly, we have to fund all of this. So they were looking at how do they capitalize and leverage federal funds as well as state funds to be able to really drive training and education across the states. So with those three goals as part of their strategy, they went out and essentially designated Ohio State University as a center of excellence. As I mentioned, WIA led the sector partnership and is leading the sector partnership. And I'm proud to say we started with 11, right, Sarah? 11 of those rural school systems where training and education was pushed out to now we're up to 30. So really exciting stuff, but the goal is to really make sure that you're leveraging your economies of scale, making sure that you have industry validated training. And then, as I mentioned before, if you don't have students enrolled in the program because you haven't done a good job in terms of career awareness, you're missing the mark, right? So starting with a career awareness, understanding what the needs of the industry is to make sure that you're providing that training and education. And once you've completed the training and education, making sure they actually have positions with employers so that they're hired up.
I think there's a couple of things that Amelia just said I think are really important. I'm going to ask you to elaborate in a second on justice-involved individuals who are coming back from incarceration. But the first is, this isn't just about young workers. It's about adults retraining and reskilling, right? And particularly as we look at the numbers of 17, 18-year-olds graduating from high schools, there's not enough of them to meet the demand for the workforce that we're going to need for this. So thinking about on-ramps for adult workers is really important. I'm going to ask Amelia to elaborate on that in a second. The second thing I want to say is rating resources, right? Ohio used $9 million from a U.S. Department of Labor Quest grant and $3 million from a U.S. Economic Development Administration Good Jobs Challenge grant. And they got going on their broadband workforce development plans long before BEAD even was a twinkle in the eye in terms of the money actually hitting the street, right? And so I think that is important when we think about being intentional about workforce development. And the last thing I'll say is, we tossed around this term sector partnership. Amelia, I'd love to have you first elaborate a little bit on what a sector partnership is that WIA has been involved in, and then talk a little bit about the work that you've done around folks who are justice involved or coming out of the criminal legal system.
Sure. To sum up sector partnership, I would say the convening or convener, we play the convener of government, educators, and industry. So we're bringing those stakeholders together to discuss what are the issues at hand. And by the way, sector partnerships are not new. We're just applying it here in this workforce and broadband situation. So ideally, what we're doing is bringing in all these key players and stakeholders to identify what are the needs here, what are specific labor needs, what are skill gaps, and then how can we solution that. And then in terms of incarcerated population, so I like to think about it holistically in terms of just making sure that when we look at having an available and skilled workforce, it's looking at all the population. In this case, we have a program that we run through Ashland University that actually goes into the prison systems and trains folks within 6 months to a year, getting them ready for release. And it's really exciting because they're at 98% success rates in that. I know there are other states, as I mentioned, best practices. I know Louisiana is doing the same thing. And as we think about incarcerated population and the release, the key thing to think about there as legislators and government is how do we facilitate those folks to be able to be hired, right? Are there policies in place that inhibit that? So working through some of those as well.
So I want to lift up a couple of important themes that we just heard, and then I'm going to come to Dave. The first is the workforce development field has been around for a long time. And there are best practices in workforce development, things like this industry-informed development of curriculum that community colleges or nonprofit training providers can do, partnerships with workforce development boards and other entities, sector partnerships that could have as a convener an industry organization, as Amelia was just discussing. New York put in their BEAD initial proposal volume 2. We've been doing sector partnerships for a while now. we're gonna think about moving on to telecom, right? But Ohio's already doing it, right? So Colorado also working on industry partnerships for the broadband sector. So that's really important. I see that we're getting a question from online, so I'm just gonna check that, and then I'm gonna go to Dave. All right, let's see here. Here's a question, this is a question for later on, so we'll get to that panel. We'll get to that panelist in a minute, but Dave Stehlin, the CEO of the Telecommunications Industry Association, is here to talk to us, not just about TIA's work, but in particular about a pretty exciting new portal that you've just launched called Broadband Nation. So tell us a little bit about Broadband Nation.
Great. You can see it up here, but while that's getting loaded, if you can scroll to the top. I've been in the industry 40 years, 1984, right at divestiture, and I started working for Corning in fiber optics 40 years ago. And one of the first visits I made to the field was in Williamsport, PA, visiting a then Bell PA engineering office, teaching them about fiber optics. So I completely agree with what Debbie said, that we've got to rethink and reteach these, what is really a relatively new industry. Side note, the very first fiber to the home project was 1982 in Princeton, New Jersey, done by Bell, New Jersey Bell at the time. So we've been building out fiber for 40 plus years to homes, but we still obviously have a long way to go. So just before the BEAD allocations were announced last June, I went in to see Mitch Landrieu. Mitch was the guy that ran IIJA for the president. So I went to the White House. We talked about BEAD. We talked about IIJA, the multi-trillion-dollar project. And I said, that's great that all these states and all these territories are going to get a lot of money. What are you doing to use the White House bully pulpit for workforce development? And his answer was, it's not our job. And I was frankly shocked when he said that, and I told him so. And I started talking about how we need to do this. We're going to spend all this money wisely. We have to have a workforce. This is not just building it out and then you're done. It's not the oil pipeline in North Dakota 10 years ago. You build it once and then you're done. No, these are careers that are needed. The industry is aging out, as people have said. For every 5 people that leave the industry, only 1 is coming in. Yet we have 200,000 plus that are needed on the wireline and wireless side. So it's a real challenge that we have. And he said, of course, as you would expect, come back with a plan. So that was the genesis of Broadband Nation. If we can go to the portal again, we worked with Fierce, and Fierce is the largest telecom media company out there, to develop Broadband Nation. We went live just a few weeks ago. And the intention is to attract, train, and deliver the next generation of broadband talent. So broadbandnation.org is the site, and we're agnostic to technology. So it's fiber, it's wireless, it's satellite, we need all the above. But the intent is to educate the country about the need for broadband, the need for broadband technicians, and how it's a mission for America, but it's great for you as an individual. You can scroll to that a little bit. So, what's in it for me? The jobs are pay well. You don't have to have a college education. You can go a couple years after high school. There are jobs needed in every state and territory. These jobs are, hundreds of thousands of jobs are needed across the country. Keep scrolling. And then what we do is we worked with all the big workforce companies and the service providers to understand, go back a little bit, to understand what's needed. So we broke it very simply in 5 major categories: fiber splicing, wireless technology, tower climbers, construction people, customer service folks, and a catch-all for network technology. And we figured out by talking to those that hire, what are the personality traits that these people have? A fiber splicer likes to use their hands and work independently. Someone on a construction team likes to be part of a crew. A tower climber is somewhat adventurous. So then what we're doing is we're going to the sites using social media where they normally go. So we'll do social media advertising on Instagram and YouTube and talk about Broadband Nation and to try to pull them to the site. Once they come to the site, they can get educated. They can learn about the jobs, they can learn about the careers, they can see a day in the life of a fiber splicer, they can understand what career paths might look like. That's what we're initially doing. That's the attraction piece. Then what comes is, okay, we're going to go locally to get trained. So we're working with community colleges around the country. We were already up to about 100 listed, all the training that they offer for broadband. So somebody can go and figure out where I can go locally to get trained, and then where I can go locally to get a job. So the intent again is attract, train, and deliver that next generation of talent. We want to keep these jobs rural. As we all know, BEAD is primarily for rural America. So we want people to understand a career path on what it looks like for them over time, what the various career paths are. And so the intent is to educate the folks on these great jobs, great careers. Look at wireline, look at wireless, look at satellite, figure out where I go locally to get trained and where I go locally to get a job. That's the intent of Broadband Nation. And now what we're trying to do is reach out to all the states and build state-specific pages. We just went live, as I said a few weeks ago, we have a Louisiana page up there. They, of course, were the first broadband office to get things going. We're working with them and their community colleges. We're also reaching out to secondary schools. Fiber Optic 101. You can earn a badge on learning about fiber optics with a self-paced online course. We want to do the same with wireless. So we need to create more stickiness in the industry as well. You educate them early, they learn more about it, they realize it's not just a job, so they're not going to move down the street for $1 an hour increase, but now I have a career. And that's the intent here, is educate, train, get them jobs, get them great careers, have them stay local.
Dave, thank you so much. One thing you and I had also talked about when we prepped for this panel was that the Broadband Nation site that you've created isn't just for workers themselves. It's for student advisors, student navigators, workforce development professionals. We're thinking about on-ramps to these careers for adults. And I say this speaking as a middle-aged white person, right? We don't have enough middle-aged white people to do this, right? This career has to be open to folks who've not traditionally been in these roles. Talk to us about who you're hoping will find out about Broadband Nation from that kind of ancillary circle of advisors and guidance counselors and so forth. Who do you want to know about this and to use it as a resource?
Yeah, so it's through the state workforce offices to the community colleges, and I recognize that some states have a centralized program and some are very decentralized, like Michigan. And we want to reach out to the community colleges who, frankly, do a really bad job of advertising, number one. Number two, community colleges historically want people to be on a degree track as compared to a certification track. So there has to be a push to get people at the community college level and then at the guidance counselor level, at the secondary school level, to understand about these careers. And so we'll have things that will be available for them to download posters about Broadband Nation that they can use at their schools, whether it be a community college or at a secondary school.
And that is a perfect segue, because now we get to talk to Chad Carrick. And Chad is CEO of the REA Energy Cooperative. And when we were prepping for this panel, I was taking notes furiously from all these amazing folks, but particularly when Chad was talking about building economies from within and building a workforce from within. So Chad, talk to us about building your fiber workforce from within, from rural communities.
Yes, thank you, man. Excuse me. We had a need that we had to get accomplished, and all the good work that everybody does takes time. So when you talk at the national level and you go down to the state level, local level, and nonprofit level, we need that for sure. But we had a need that had to be fulfilled right away. We had a lot of retirements that came. We kind of used a page out of the playbook for our electrical allotment. So we worked with the union, the IBEW. We worked with Pennsylvania Rural Electric Association because they have a training program. And we've also worked with some industry experts, suppliers of equipment, suppliers of material. They want to see this develop as well. And we sat down and put that all together and came up with a apprenticeship program through the state. One of the requirements that we have is you have to have a pre-apprenticeship program. So as David mentioned, you want to make sure that people, students, sport adults, want to actually do the job. One way to do that is through pre-apprenticeship programs. So there are pre-apprenticeship programs throughout the country, and whether it's electrical linemen or fiber linemen or fiber technicians or splicers. So that right there acts as a lead up because they go through a very intensive approach, but not every student can afford that or can go to a different state and participate in those programs. So we work with local STEAM academies and develop a program. River Valley School District is an example of that. Indiana has another tech school that we're working with right now. Not just for electrical linemen, we're already speaking with them on fiber end of things. We sort of develop programs with them for electrical contracting. And we're going to continue to work just to get to the high school level. What we found out is a lot of students hear about going to college, and there are students that don't want to go to college or just not college material, and they really don't know what to do. They don't understand if there's other programs out there that fits their personalities and fits their desires. It's just not communicated to them. So we started going into the school, Lockwood School was very receptive to that. We started going into the schools and started to break down that stigma and show that, hey, there are sustainable jobs out there that pay good benefits, that have good wage, that you can make a career out of. Yes, you got to do some training, but the training is exactly what your personality is looking for. And we started just an approach of trying to make the funnel bigger to get students into these workforce areas by having job shadowing, by speaking with parents, going to the schools, talking during assemblies, and it's really been successful.
I think one other takeaway that I hope folks are hearing here is that these jobs have multiple different career pathways coming out of them, right? You could have an entry-level role in one occupation and then pivot and say, you know, the thing I'm really passionate about is connecting with customers, and then move into a more customer service facing role. You could really have an interest in the technician end of things and say, you know what, I actually do want to go back to school now that I have, a certificate or a non-credit, industry recognized credential. I do actually want to go and get a 2-year degree and be able to work in a more engineering type or mechatronics type or similar role. So I think that's really important. The other thing I want to lift up is apprenticeship, right? We talked around this word a lot, but I'm not sure everyone in this room has the same understanding. So just briefly, right? The federal registered apprenticeship program dates to the 1930s. It is sometimes called college without the debt or the earn while you learn program, right? You are paid to work as an apprentice, typically for a period of years before you become a fully licensed worker in that area. In the last 12 years, this is the most bipartisan thing you will hear about in a long time, right? President Obama and President Trump both invested significantly in apprenticeship. There's not a lot of things you can say about that. And in particular, the federal government has been really creative about saying, you know what, we're going to improve apprenticeships in areas that you might not think of as having apprenticeships, right? So culinary apprenticeships with the hotel industry, for example, or other hospitality workers. So in the broadband field, of course, there have been telecommunications apprenticeships for a long time, but I think there are opportunities for more to be happening for investments in both apprenticeship, but also the pre-apprenticeship programs that are on-ramps to those, as Chad was just discussing. So Chad, I'm gonna come back to you because we did have a question from online that I wanna, and I'm literally just gonna read it because I wanna make sure I have the specific language accurately captured here. Could the cooperative explain how funding their broadband builds has the dual purpose of internet and smart grid, and how that allows for things like distributed energy resources, demand control, and security?
That's very interesting questions, a large umbrella. So to back up, we purchased a internet company that does fiber and fixed wireless because we saw that there was a need in our communities for high-speed internet access. But the co-op itself also had a need for smart grid capabilities that just weren't there because there's no fiber in those areas. So the reason we need it because there's protective devices that need to have that type of speed. It's really a safety concern. So you can't have a dial-up shutting off a breaker or something like that. You need something that is truly lightning fast. So we had a need to get all of our substations on many levels aside from protective equipment, security, grid hardening, just in general. But our approach to green energy is kilowatt hour and not use as your greenest kilowatt hour. And so what we mean by that is that during peak times when it's very hot, such as today when it's 90 degrees, this could be a peak day for this month. It's almost the end of the month. There's a very good possibility this is a peak day on the PJM grid. So we can use that fiber capability to manage our system better to bring down that demand. That is your greenest approach to energy. It saves us costs. It saves the transmission companies costs. It saves the generation company costs. But also with all the solar panels, batteries, the coordination, all that is going to become very complex because you have traditional generation coming online. So to coordinate smaller solar arrays with batteries, windmills, whatever source it is, we're kind of agnostic to it. We just want to get people to turn their lights on whenever they need that. It's there. How that gets there is getting more complex because it truly is going to be a mesh network of generation and transmission coming to your homes. Again, broadband is going to be essential for that.
So just as a kind of scene setting, and I think this builds on what Chad was just talking about, IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, is a massive generational investment, not just in the BEAD program, but in clean energy and related things. So the Department of Energy, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Commerce are rolling out a huge number of programs right now. Why is that important for a broadband workforce conversation? Because those folks are going to be competing for your same workers, right? So the folks who are doing electric vehicle manufacturing, you know what? Those plants are full of fiber. Right, folks who are doing energy transition, and I see Nicole from Natalie from Just Transition here. You know, those energy companies, they're full of fiber, and so guess what? That's both job security for fiber workers, but also job competition for broadband companies trying to make sure they have a skilled workforce. So it means investing in those workers' skills is going to pay economic dividends for workers themselves in terms of being able to get good pay and job security. But it also means we have to be serious about investing in them because we can't just, as one person in a state that shall remain nameless, but not Pennsylvania, told me, oh, we've talked to employers and they're just going to staff up by hiring 1099 independent contractors the way they always do. Like, okay, that's not going to work. We're in a generational investment moment. That's not going to work. We have one more question from online, and then I'm going to open up to folks in the room here. If you want to ask questions as well, I have a few questions, but I'm going to push mine off in favor of audience questions. A question from Town Strike: has there been any attempt, Dave? This is for you. Has there been any attempt to connect Broadband Nation to state workforce development boards or any of the local workforce development boards here in Pennsylvania? There are 22 of them.
Yeah, we're trying to talk to every state. Typically, they'll start either in the broadband office or in the governor's office, and then they direct us to where their workforce development focus is. So we've had a couple of conversations with Pennsylvania. We're continuing to advance that. Mentioned Louisiana before. They have a very centralized community college program. They've already designated $30 million to build out workforce development, of which this will be a big piece. But as I said, we're working with many states, trying to reach all of them, and a lot of the reservations as well. So one of the things we're working on with FBA is a community college right outside a reservation that wants to build out fiber optics. So Broadband Nation is a big tent approach. We want to bring in every technology and every type of organization as possible to help solve this mission.
That's great. All right. So I want to give folks an opportunity if any of you have questions. If not, I do have, go ahead.
Hi, Mel Luckenbaugh from the Community Action Association of Pennsylvania. I'm curious, a lot of these types of jobs are traditionally male, neurotypical type jobs. So what can be done to ensure inclusive work spaces for women, for non-binary persons, for trans persons, so that they can get into this industry as well?
All right, I'm just gonna repeat that question into the mic just to make sure that folks online can hear it. So the question from the Community Action Agency was, a lot of these jobs have traditionally been held by white workers who are neurotypical, that is not neurodivergent or folks with disabilities. What is being done to make sure that there are realistic on-ramps into these jobs for women, people of color, neurodivergent folks? I'll let anybody hop in and take this.
So, I mean, I'll start. So we have been working with not just the, correctional institutions, but also the historically Black community colleges and universities. And we also reach out to neurodivergent, because, I mean, people on the autistic spectrum would very much make great fiber splicers, no doubt about that. And also, so I started by saying I've been in this industry for like half my life, so 25, 26 years or something. And, I remember back in the day, I could count the number of women in the room at a conference. I mean, while that's gotten better, it hasn't. It hasn't. So we have the Women in Fiber group, our committee, where, we're trying to encourage participation from the last year at Fiber Connect, we had tech savvy girls that we took them to the Fiber Connect show and took them around so they can, meet the vendors in the space and the tool makers and things of that nature. So we are trying to get more women involved. And believe me, I've been quoted by saying, women would make great fiber optic technicians. Amelia.
Yeah, so just to echo that, she did mention that we are working with many HBCUs. WIA has an affiliate that I used to be a past president of called the Women's Wireless Leadership Forum. We actually just launched Telecom Trailblazers, where we're really focused on female in STEM. And so we want to make sure we're reaching all of those women in the industry while they're young, but more than just women. I think we've been really, really deliberate in looking at K through 12, getting all of those kids, regardless who you are, where you are, involved in our industry and looking at the opportunities in our industry because they vary. Debbie, you mentioned it. You could be in sales, you could be in engineering, you could be in construction, site acquisition, learn permitting. So the opportunities vary and span so wide in our industry that everyone potentially has that spot. What I would also share is, we're looking at different formats, right? We're learning online through LMS, but we're also looking at AR, VR, using some of those fancy headsets. So you may not have, you may have a disability and that just doesn't allow you to go out into the field, but you could be in an operations center working and troubleshooting and solving some of these problems as well. So I think our industry offers a lot of opportunities for everyone. And it's our job here to make sure that folks out there know that they exist.
I just wanted to make just because, I have to elaborate on. So so some of the electric co-ops, one in particular in Virginia, has a Girl Power Day. And because they are also connected, it's the electric co-op, the Virginia, Maryland, Delaware Association of Electric Co-ops. So they have a Girl Power Day that they have in December. So it's not only the electrical side, but then we also bring the fiber side in and we participate in things like that. There are other things that we can do too. So there's a Build My Future events where we can, you can host your own event where you invite all the high school students, and believe it or not, a lot of girls, do go to those, where you bring in like your backhoes and your bucket trucks and you have your, fiber splicing things. So there's a bunch of things that we can do. Plus, the Build My Future folks have this series of like children's books, like Good Night Tonight Construction Site, I'm Dirty, things like that to get them more aware of, the construction side of the business.
I'm a policy advocate, so I have to point out there that women are disproportionately caregivers, and other states are investing in childcare as a solution so that folks actually can have childcare while they are training for these jobs. Which, if you're unemployed and you're looking for training, you may not be able to afford childcare without that support. So Pennsylvania could be doing more on that front. I see Steve in front of me, so Steve Herzenberg, go for it.
I want to say something that I'm going to ask. The actual questions in chat. In the unionized building trades, the women pre-apprenticeship programs, apprenticeship readiness programs have made real progress in the last 10 years. Depends on where you are. If you're in Massachusetts, the female share of apprentices is now up to like 11%. If you're in Pennsylvania, it's still 6%, but that's twice what it was like 8 years ago. So there's a fantastic Women in Non-Traditional Careers program in Philly. You may know about this. It leads to it's linked with a bunch of trades. It's run by the Finishing Trades Institute. Again, I'm happy to give you names of people, but so it's really now at the point that these are understood technologies. It's the common sense stuff you'd expect, including the workplace culture stuff, so that people stay. Chad, is your pre-apprenticeship program a pathway to the line worker apprenticeship?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So it's local 126.
We're 459, yes.
Right, okay.
Good questions. Yeah, with that.
Yeah, Andy Stucker from Next Century Cities. I'm curious about, the generational time, like to invest in workforce development, for investing mainly in like fiber splicers in 5 years since we built things out. Are we dual training people in the tech, or are we worried about overtraining the amount of people? Like, will those jobs be existing in 5 years, or will they need to be retrained in other things?
So we'll tag team this.
Yeah.
We're good at tag teaming. When we think about industries and or industry broadband, we don't think about these as just jobs. We think about these as careers.
Right.
Right. And so we also think about it in the format of build, operate, and maintain. So whereas now there's a big push because we need a lot of building, somebody's got to operate the network, somebody's going to maintain the network. So really the occupations allow for transferable skills, they allow for movement, promotions within the industry. And so we have such a shortage. I'm holding her in because I wanted to breathe through this. We have such a shortage that we don't even know how long it's going to take just to catch up. Right. And then think about BEAD and some of the other federally funded programs. That's going to call for more and more workers. So we have quite the ways to go to get to oversaturation of the market for laborers.
Thanks.
We aren't even close, just because I have to talk about this. We aren't even close to where we need to be. Arguably, we should have started. I've been talking about this for 3 years. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And what wakes me up in the middle of the night is that this industry has not shifted the way it's thinking. We're all sitting around waiting for BEAD money to come out, and then we're going to have the hair on fire moment, and we're not going to have the people. We get that question all the time. So once this is built, then what?
Yeah.
Then what do these people do? Well, I'll tell you, squirrels happen. I live in rural North Carolina, and guns happen. People shoot at fiber lines because they want to shoot at a squirrel or bird or whatever. Squirrels love the taste of fiber. Somehow they get their little teeth through that stuff. But maintenance, so the other point that I want to make is the non-dead-end job. So does anybody in the room know who Ivan Seidenberg is? Being up in Pennsylvania, I would think some might know. No? No hands?
I only know because we've been together.
We've been together, yeah. So, and I bring him up all the time because he's my poster child. So Ivan Seidenberg was a splicer, copper splicer, not fiber, unfortunately, but a copper splicer in manholes in New York. And he then was one of the very gifted and very curious people. And he went on to be the president and CEO of Verizon. So these are not dead-end jobs. And you think that there wasn't somebody to backfill his position? We needed to backfill his position when he got out of the man. They're a constant thing, And as subscribers grow, there's still going to be the need for other support roles, like the NOC, the Network Operations Center. There's, and some people take, fiber optic tech courses just so that they can talk the same language to the guys and girls in the field, people in the field.
Right.
So there's never going to be a place where, what are these people going to do? It's never going to happen. There will always be something in those career opportunities.
I could also add, as we're training them up, we're having them still in the way by other industries today.
Yeah.
So we can't train them fast enough.
Yeah, let me add that one of the largest workforce companies in America, it's called Mostech. They have about 30,000 employees, and they're booked out through 2030. This is even before BEAD. So there's a long-term need, clearly. And, you know, one of the challenges I think that was talked about this morning is with the BEAD rules, et cetera. We want to keep these rural mom and pop ISPs and service providers in business. If they don't go after this business in a big way, and a lot of them are really scared about it, if they don't go after it in a big way, some of the really big guys are going to come in and build using contract labor, leave the area, and then maintain the network from a distance. That only leads to poor customer service. So you need to have more and more and more people that stay local.
So we have another question from online. How do we think about pathways into jobs that are covered by the trades in areas where there are often barriers to entry in apprenticeship or just historic lack of trust working with diverse communities? So you touched, Amelia, earlier on historically Black colleges and universities and other kinds of education or workforce organizations that maybe have already built trust with communities of color. Is there anything you'd like to elaborate on that? And then I'll just go down the line if other folks have things they want to add on this question. You know, overcoming a lack of trust of folks who might have been burned before for job opportunities that didn't materialize, or even workplaces that were unwelcome.
Yeah. So just to back up, so WIE actually has been registered with the Department of Labor since 2017 for TIRAP, Telecommunications Industry Registered Program. It's our national program where we do have a lot of sponsorship, FBA being one of them. What I would tell you is there's a fallacy the way people think about pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship. So think about pre-apprenticeship as pre-employment, and then apprenticeship in terms of you have a job and this is your continued on-the-job training. We've seen a number of employers not necessarily engage in apprenticeship because they think that there's a lot of administrative burden or reporting that's required. And so there are folks like us that run TIRAP that do that technical assistance and administration. And then really what you're doing as you're training your employees anyway, right? Because there's some level of training that you're doing with your employees. You can be checking the box for that on-the-job training. And I think by doing so, here's the part that you instill trust on, because now you're investing in your employees and they feel valued, you're changing the culture, and suddenly, my employer wants me to be here and is investing in me and is willing to help coach me up and mentor me and train me for that next opportunity and promotion. I think that goes a long way.
Love that idea of a career pathway. Dave and Chad, I want to give you a moment to chime in on this question if you want to, otherwise we're going to move on.
Yeah, I would just add that it's a two-way street. Employers need to do what they're supposed to do and be good employers, and employees need to sometimes stick it out. There's sometimes that might be difficult. One of the things that we've heard that from a number of people that we need to add to Broadband Nation is soft skill training. How do I take constructive criticism from my boss? A lot of people don't like that. They're not used to it. They don't have that experience. So we have to, it's a two-way street. The employee has to do what they're supposed to do, and the employer has to do what they're supposed to do. And that's one of the challenges in this industry is stickiness. Is we got to get people to start to find out about the jobs, start the jobs, stick with it, even if things get a little tough. Because if you hang, as with most things, if you hang on a little bit longer, it usually works out longer.
Just add to what Dave said. Barriers are self-barriers. If you're interested in becoming a lineman or a fiber technician, whatever, talk to somebody that's in the field. Call the local company. Companies want people to work. They really don't care. They just want somebody with background is or anything like that. They truly want somebody to work. They will welcome anybody to come in because it's beyond just trying to get workers. It's being able to tell their story. As a company, if you bring somebody in, if you're not proud as an employee, there's something wrong with you. You're in the wrong line of work. So if somebody comes in and wants to learn their trade, I see it with my linemen all the time. They are so excited that anybody comes in and just says, hey, what do you do? What makes you get up every day? That's a 2-hour conversation right there. And so anybody that has a barrier, first thing I would recommend is call call somebody, say, I'm interested in becoming a farmer, I'm interested in becoming a slicer, and ask if they can do the job shadow. Talk to educators in those fields, break down the barriers. You can do that yourself, because employers that truly like doing what they're doing are going to be more than happy to share that information and get you involved.
And I'll say this because Chad is probably modest about it, but employers that are rooted in their communities are more likely to be accountable to those communities and answerable to those communities. So that's an important consideration when you're thinking about workforce development. I see we had a question back here, and then I'm going to come up here.
Yes. Lori Stout from Connections Work. So I work, Kathleen and I work for a nonprofit workforce development for people who have been incarcerated. And so I love the fact that there's discussions about focus on training them. And Dave, you'll be happy to know we have a registered pre-apprenticeship program that the major component of it, in addition to the hands-on skills training, is the cognitive behavioral intervention training through the University of Cincinnati. But where we sometimes come across an even bigger barrier is when we have a client who is like now ready to change your life, move forward. They have the skills, they have the passion, but because of their background, they can't get that job. And so in addition to all those things that they're doing, I'm just curious, has there been any movement or talk of movement about changing regulations to accept people with backgrounds into this industry, into the, these great paying jobs? There's a lot of people that had a bad moment in life, paid their time, have the skills and whatever, ready to move on. And because of that one bad moment, they can't get these jobs.
So one thing that I learned, really, I didn't know much about the incarceration system, to be honest, and then I started working with the Ohio Department of Rehab and Corrections. And I learned more about people who are incarcerated. Plus, I've got that kind of mind where I watch those like murder shows and, like documentaries and stuff like that. So, I had some ideas, but, the interesting thing is that, it's a mindset, because there's sometimes that someone gets incarcerated because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. There are lots of times where someone is in prison because they didn't want to take the chance of going through the jury system and have them get it wrong. So sometimes people actually do admit to crimes that they didn't commit. And it's a mindset for the people on the outside. So there are companies like, for example, and there are barriers, because let's face it, there are some things like, a person can't, if you've got somebody who's been in the incarcerated system, trained and now outside working in the field, there might be some barriers to where they can work. So, within a certain distance of the school, they can not leave their county. So if they're with a contractor, it's kind of difficult to get through those barriers. I don't know on a regulatory basis what, is going on. That's above my pay grade, but we can only help try to change the language. But there's also things like contractors' relationships with their ISPs. In a lot of cases, they cannot hire somebody on their crew who has been in the prison system. So there's a lot of challenges with it, but, and I think it's a long road ahead, unfortunately. But it's kind of like we're working on it.
All right, we're coming close to time here. So I want to do two things. One is just to flag that these terrific panelists will be here, so you can come up and chat with them in the break, which is following this in just a moment. But I'm going to give them each 15 seconds to close us out here, and I'm going to give them an option. They can either leave you with a quick story or leave you with an action item. So I'm going to start with Chad because he's down at the end and move my way forward here. A quick story or an action item that you want to leave folks thinking about.
Sure, thank you. I guess the thing I'd like to leave everybody with is we're all leaders here. We all talk to lots of people. If somebody is truly interested in getting into the industry, encourage it. There's a lot of opportunity there, and the jobs will be sustainable.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add, just go to broadbandnation.org. We're a nonprofit. There are a lot of ways to get engaged. At the local level, at the state level, and at the national level.
Thank you. Amelia.
I appreciate the career awareness piece, so now I'm just going to give a story instead. 17-year-old kid Buckeye Community Center, went through the training, and now he's making $24 an hour coming out. There's opportunities out
Another story, I guess, just a, well, a graduate, a veteran graduate from Learning Alliance in Florida, came out of training making $24 an hour, and then within a month went up to $34 an hour because of the training. They realized that what they had was the right kind of training. They could move up quickly. ROI is recognized. So I say take training very seriously. Avoid shy workmanship and years of trying to fix things.
All right, my colleague Katie likes to say data makes you credible, stories make you memorable. You got some of each on our panel today. Please join me in thanking our great panel.